The Westward Eye is a gothic horror audio drama. Mature themes and gore are present. Listener discretion is advised. Episode-specific trigger warnings can be found in the description. Thank you. Somewhere that may have existed long ago, or perhaps is still to come, lies a place isolated from the rest of civilization, known as the West, where lost communities perform ancient traditions, old gods pry themselves from the earth, and monstrous creatures lurk in the darkness. The stranger stood a good 50 yards from the campsite, hands still resting just below their pursed lips. Even with the light of the rising sun basking their figure in a warm morning glow, their appearance was hard to shape out as Sterling rose to their feet. The stillness of the early hour had once been peaceful, with the song of swallows floating across the dry breeze and tiny rodents scurrying through the underbrush. But now, with the stranger's presence, all felt tense. Behind Sterling, Tobin and Etta remained fast asleep, their bodies rising and falling in shallow breaths. Sterling's own exhaustion had all but dissipated moments ago, as they noticed the figure watching them from the lip of the canyon. Their hands rested at the hilts of their pistols, poised.
Put your hands in the air and walk down here slowly.
Without a word, the figure obliged and began making their way towards the camp. As they creeped down the steep bank of the arroyo, Sterling still struggled to make out any discernible features. Their form little more than a silhouette against the painted sky. Sterling wrapped a tight grip around their guns, knuckles white, waiting for a single step out of place. It wasn't until the person's face came into view that Sterling spoke up.
Not another step.
They pulled their pistols from their holsters, but kept them facing the ground as the stranger slowed to a standstill. Sterling pivoted, positioning themselves between the stranger and their slumbering companions. Their tone lowered as they spoke.
Are you alone?
The stranger, a young man, stood frozen in the shade of the arroyo. He appeared simple and plain, with shoulder-length brown hair blowing softly in the chilled wind. His thin frame was draped in a navy suit jacket, resting over a fitted white button-up. Thick, rectangular glasses magnified his eyes, ice blue in the morning light. Sterling noted that he looked similar to how Tobin had when he'd first approached them at the farm. Oddly put together, academic.
Come on, speak up. I don't have all day.
The man flashed Sterling a warm smile.
I'd like to offer you my aid.
We don't need your help.
Your companions, they're hurt. I have a property nearby, just a little ways west. There's medical equipment there, sterilization supplies.
Sterling hadn't expected to see anyone for at least their first week back in the West. Their Ma's journals had maps, mentioned landmarks, shelters, but never other people. Although Sterling knew that there were communities scattered throughout the barren landscape, from what they were able to pull from the fog of their memories, none existed this close to the hostile East.
No one's hurt.
No one who camps in the arroyo comes out unscathed, if they come out at all.
Is that a threat?
No, my apologies. Allow me to start over. My name is Wymer Feld.
Wymer extended a hand toward Sterling, as if to offer up a handshake, though quickly realized that wasn't the best idea and let out an uncomfortable cough. Rather, Wymer slowly lowered his hand and began unbuttoning the cuff of his shirt. Sterling twitched with anxiety at every movement the stranger made. While he didn't appear remotely hostile, there was something about Wymer that rubbed Sterling the wrong way. Whether it was the calm tone of his voice or the uncomfortable amount of eye contact, to Sterling, Wymer seemed off. They raised one of their pistols and aimed it right between Wymer's eyes, ready to tell him off. Without a moment's hesitation, Wymer quickly shed an arm of his jacket and rolled up the sleeve. Against his pale skin, deep, scarred bite marks, similar to Etta's, twisted up the man's arm.
A few years ago, I was offered a teaching position in the area. A local home for unwanted children was in desperate need of a headmaster. I traveled quite a ways to get here, and much like you, I found myself setting up camp in this arroyo. The night had been going rather well until it found me. If it weren't for a lone coyote making easier prey, I don't know what I would have done. I heard the gunshot echo out a few hours ago, but by the time I arrived at your camp, you were gone.
Your concern is noted, but we don't need your help. We intend to start traveling soon, so please just go back where you came from and leave us alone.
The teeth burrow their way into the flesh. If they're not removed quickly, they'll never come out. I still have a few that I didn't get out in time.
Wymer raised his hand and moved his fingers. Some twitched unnaturally. Others simply didn't move at all.
Nerve damage, it takes hold fast.
Sterling's gaze flashed towards Etta, curled up on the cold earth. Her chest gently rose and fell with each breath. Her arm, which had stopped bleeding a while prior, remained horribly gruesome. As they looked at her, Sterling cringed at the small teeth protruding out from her arm, pressed up against the blood-soaked bandana.
You can get the teeth out.
Yes.
And make sure they don't. She needs to use her hands. They're both scholars, writers.
Yes, but every minute the teeth stay buried in their flesh, they get harder to remove.
Hesitantly, Sterling lowered their gun and gave Wymer a nod.
I'll wake them. Don't come any closer until I say so.
I wouldn't dream of it.
Wymer flashed a crooked smile. Sterling simply glared in return before moving to wake their companions. They knelt down next to Tobin first, who still lied motionless on his back, mouth agape with a bit of drool trickling down his cheek. Whatever quiet charm Tobin had held the night before as Sterling carried him to the campsite was gone.
Tobin, it's time to wake up.
Sterling.
Come on. I don't want to have to be the bad guy here. Tobin.
In a panic, Tobin shot up to a sitting position. Sterling leaned out of the way, their companion's head stopping mere inches from their nose. Tobin looked groggy, as though the few hours of sleep had taken rest from him, rather than restored it. His face was the color of clay. His green eyes were accented with dark under-eye bags.
Sterling, what the...
Someone's here.
Huh? What do you...
You wanted to interview someone? Well, Wymer here has graciously offered to let us visit his... home?
Sterling winced. Lying to their companion didn't feel as good as they'd hoped. While it was a genuine opportunity for an interview, Sterling didn't want Tobin to realize how dire the situation of his hand, let alone Etta's entire arm, was. Within an instant, Tobin had pulled himself into a standing position, then quickly regretted it.
Ugh, my head. Sterling, what happened last night?
You really don't remember?
No,
Morning. I hate to rush you, but we really should get going.
At the sound of Wymer's voice, Tobin's posture stiffened as he attempted to mask his exhaustion. Sterling rolled their eyes and moved to wake up Etta.
Hello, my name is Tobin Clyde. My companions and I are traveling from...
Don't tell them where we are from.
Far away. And hoping to document what life is like in this area of the continent. If it's not too much to ask, would you be all right with an interview?
Of course. If you'd like, you can talk to some of my students as well.
Students? You're an academic.
A teacher, yes. I work in a school for young children who lost their parents. My schoolhouse is small, so we only have 4 students at the moment. They're quite bright. I'm sure they'd love an opportunity to be interviewed.
That would be amazing. Here, let's shake on it to make it official.
Don't get close to him, Tobin.
Wymer's demeanor lightened as Tobin took a few steps toward him before pausing and turning back to Sterling. They crouched near Etta, helping her to her feet. Tobin noted the dried blood that clung to Etta's body, staining her light blue blouse dark red.
Oh, my... Etta, what happened?
He rushed towards her, his head pounding with every step.
Are you all right?
Etta looked up at Tobin. Her brown eyes had a certain glazed-over look.
Yes. It doesn't hurt much.
She'll be okay. This gentleman has offered to help dress and clean the wound. I don't fully trust him, but we don't really have any other option here.
Bile rose in his throat as Tobin looked at his friend's mangled arm. Its bitter taste burned the back of his tongue. With a strained swallow, he forced it back down.
But she'll be okay?
Of course.
Do you need any help over there?
We're fine. Just stay there.
Sterling kept a cautious eye in his direction as they helped their companions gather their supplies. Wymer had lowered himself into a sitting position, his attention turning to the vast desert rather than the camp. Once they were ready to finally leave, Etta reached for her pack. Before her hand could grasp around its strap, Sterling pulled it away from her and tossed it over their shoulder.
I don't want you overexerting yourself.
Etta opened her mouth in an attempt to protest, but quickly closed it again after looking down at her wounds, head spinning. Sterling nodded, offering Etta a reassuring look.
You'll be okay. Wymer seems to know what they're doing.
Sterling beckoned Wymer to insinuate they were ready to leave. At the sight of Sterling's wave, Wymer jumped to his feet and briskly walked to the camp.
Would you like to get going?
All right now, keep your distance.
Yes! Oh my, I have so much to ask you.
Let's just keep to small talk until we can get your scribe fixed up.
Tobin nodded before turning to Etta and wrapping his arm around her waist. She reached her good arm around his shoulder and leaned some of her weight on him.
Lead the way. But know that if anything you've said so far is a lie, or if you're leading us into some kind of ambush, there will be a bullet between your eyes. Understood?
Wymer gave a wary nod before pivoting and walking ahead. Sterling's hands remained clasped around their pistols, aiming it directly at Wymer's skull as he led them through the desert. Tobin followed close behind, steadying at his swaying body, helping her keep her balance. The hot sun beat down on his head, and his entire body felt as though it had turned against him. His hand throbbed, his stomach was in knots, and his brain felt as though it had shriveled away. Fixating on Sterling ahead was the only thing keeping Tobin going. especially to refrain from looking at his hand. Pale teeth poked out from a thick layer of grime. Their hooked bodies sent a steady stream of pain up his arm. Surrounding them, dried blood and pus flaked off his palm with any small movement. Although they couldn't have been walking for more than a few hours, to Tobin it felt like an eternity. All the benefits of the strict exercise regimen that he'd stuck to for the past 6 months seemingly disappeared, leaving him winded and exhausted, with barely enough energy to speak. He was closer than ever to the goal of his expedition, and yet he looked at Etta once again. In the light of day, she'd somehow grown more pale. Her arm, which she insisted hadn't bothered her, flinched with every misstep.
Here we are.
The man stopped about 5 yards in front of Tobin, at the edge of a small cliff. Tobin quickened to catch up with him. As he looked over the edge, he saw a quaint schoolhouse resting amongst the cacti and brush. The schoolhouse was painted white, a beacon of ivory in a sea of orange, green, and red. The land around it had been cleared, centering the schoolhouse in the middle of a large field. On the ground's outskirts stretched a crooked metal fence. It appeared to be made of barbed wire and scrap metal.
What's with the gate? Should I be worried?
You've seen the worst of it. And you of all people should understand an air of caution in these parts.
Wymer's eyes flashed towards the gun still aimed at his skull. With a huff, Sterling nodded, allowing Wymer to lead them down towards the schoolhouse. The house itself looked to be about 2 stories tall, with a tower atop its roof, housing a large bell. Tobin gazed around the property. There he saw a picnic table, a well, and a quaint garden that sprouted from the ground, shaded by a man-made awning. Wymer turned to face Tobin and his companions.
Before we go in, I do have a small favor to ask.
What?
In exchange for patching you up and the interview, I would like you to help around the schoolhouse. Nothing serious or long-term, just some light upkeep and yard work. Since it's just me and the children, I don't have much time for maintenance. It wouldn't take longer than a day. I can offer you lodging for the night, and then you can be on your way. Is that agreeable?
Sterling turned to Tobin, who offered a small shrug in response.
Fine.
Excellent.
Wymer turned and continued walking. Sterling and Tobin followed, taking their time to brace Etta, who was growing more ghostly by the minute.
Sterling. Tobin?
Etta leaned hard into Tobin's body, her eyes rolling back into her skull.
Etta? Oh, my... Etta! Sterling! Help!
Tobin turned to catch Etta's falling body moments before she collided with the earth.
Etta, can you hear me? Just listen to my voice, okay? Just...
Etta blinked her eyes open.
Tobin? Hi.
We have to hurry.
Rushing past the schoolhouse's front gate, Wymer led them around to the back. He tore open its makeshift door. Within the small back room was a modest table surrounded by racks of dried herbs and various tools. As Tobin and Sterling nearly carried Etta in, her senses quickly became overtaken with the smell of spices in the air. Her nostrils burned, the sensation little more than a discomfort compared to the stinging of her arm. Wymer's hands trembled as he reached for the jars of herbs.
You know what you're doing, right?
Yes, of course. It's just been a while. Now, Etta dear, I'm gonna need you to brace yourself. This bandana is coming off.
Wymer took a short breath. before swiftly removing the cloth from her wound, pulling scabbed blood up from Etta's skin.
Hey, Etta, it's okay. You're okay. I'm right here, okay? I'm right here with you.
Tobin cupped his hands around her face, pulling Etta's attention away from her disfigured arm.
Just breathe, okay?
All right, dear. I'm gonna need to disinfect this again before starting my work. This will sting.
The bitter smell of alcohol flooded Etta's lungs as Wymer wetted a washcloth.
Deep breath in.
Etta could feel hot tears streaming down her face as the alcohol made contact with her exposed flesh.
It's okay. You're okay. Just let it out.
Etta, I'm gonna start removing the teeth. They're pretty deep in there, so this might hurt a bit. I apologize in advance.
Wait! No! Tobin!
I'm sorry. I know how this feels. It will all be over soon.
Etta saw tears welling up in her companion's eyes.
I'm right here, okay? I'm not leaving your side.
Okay.
I'm gonna have you bite down on this, darling. Mr. Clyde, once she gives way to pain, I'll have you take it.
Wymer snagged a strip of leather from the shelf to his right before placing it gently between Etta's teeth. She bit down, its earthy smell a momentary relief from the strong herbs around her. As Etta bit down, the bitter taste of leather danced across her tongue as Wymer grabbed a pair of surgical pliers and plunged them into her arm.
Please don't move. Hold her still. It's all going to be all right.
Sterling's voice grew distant as splotches of darkness began to peek their way out from the corners of Etta's eyes. They slowly started clouding her view of Tobin, who still stood over her, doing his best to avoid looking at Wymer's handiwork. She offered a strained look towards him as her vision fully succumbed, plunging her into a deep sleep. The soft sound of wind and distant birds pulled Etta gently from her slumber, its soft tune beckoning her back to reality. After a moment, her eyes cracked open. She was alone, in a different room than the cluttered, aromatic one where she'd passed out. Instead, this space seemed more like a living area, complete with a large bookcase, end table, and a comfortable couch where Etta lay. Slowly, she lifted her arm up from her side. It was wrapped in thick, white gauze and smelled strongly of earth and herbs. The pain that had consumed her during the operation was now little more than an ache. Etta rotated her wrist. To her surprise, her action resulted in little pain. She marveled as she moved each of her fingers, all of which still appeared to be as functional as they'd been prior to the injury.
Wow. Thank you, Wymer. Whoever you are.
Who are you?
The little voice coming from behind the couch nearly made Etta jump out of her skin. Etta turned to see a young girl, no older than 8, peeking her way out from behind the arm of the couch. She had piercing blue eyes and curly red hair that fell just below her shoulders. She was dressed in a small pair of overalls strapped over a cream-colored blouse.
What are you doing here?
I could ask you the same thing.
I asked first.
My name is Etta.
Where did you come from?
Well, Wymer picked us up in the arroyo.
Wymer, you mean Mr. Failed?
Yes. Yes, Mr. Feld.
Why?
Hey now, you still need to answer my question. What's your name?
Lottie.
Well, it's a pleasure to meet you, Lottie. Are you one of Mr. Feld's students?
Lottie gave an enthusiastic nod.
That's interesting. What year are you in?
Lottie cocked her head to the side, giving Etta an odd look.
What do you mean?
What year? How far along are you in school?
Lottie stood in silence, the cogs in her brain turning ever so slightly. Etta smiled at the young girl, who was still barely peeking out from over the arm of the couch.
It's all right. Never mind. What were you doing back there?
Lottie's eyes turned towards the floor, her hands clasped behind her back as she averted her gaze from Etta.
This is where I come when I want to be alone.
Oh. Would you like me to leave?
No, you seem alright. It's just Ruth, Warren, and Clyde that I don't want to be around.
Why's that? If you want to talk, I'm here to listen.
Lottie looked up at Etta, eyes wide and full of sadness. After a moment, she gave a little nod. Etta smiled in return and patted the open space on the couch next to her. Within an instant, Lottie was sitting next to her, resting her crimson curls on Etta's unbandaged arm.
Mr. Feld gives us work to get done every day. When you're done, then you can go play. Ruth, Warren, and Clyde all get it done so fast. They get tired of waiting for me. They get mad. I can't understand the assignment. I try to stay focused, I really do. I don't know what's wrong with me. I should be able to get it done right.
Etta looked down to see tears rolling down Lottie's cheeks, staining her blue overalls. Etta's hand raised and began stroking the little girl's hair.
I understand how you feel.
Lottie looked up at her, eyes red from crying.
I didn't do great in school. I struggled paying attention, understanding things, and it was hard to watch everyone around me succeed without really trying. But eventually, I found tricks that helped me. I'm actually here because I'm sponsored to write about the West. It's something I never would have thought possible when I was your age. If you'd like, I could share some tips that I've learned.
Oh, yeah. What do you want?
Before Lottie could get more than a few words in, the door burst open. 3 more children ran into the living room, crowding around Etta and the young girl.
Lottie, are you done yet?
Ruth, I told you not to follow me.
Well, we need you. Clyde and Warren want to play sheriffs and robbers, but we need even teams.
Can't you just ask Mr. Feld to play?
No way!
That's so lame. We tried to ask Mr. Feld's guest, but he said no.
Warren gestured up to the open doorway as he spoke. Etta followed his gaze to see Tobin leaning against the doorframe, hand bandaged similarly to her own and holding a folded set of clean clothes. He'd changed as well, his frame now draped in a golden button-up and dark gray jeans.
Etta, I'm so glad to see you're all right. Let me tell you, you're lucky that you passed out, because being awake for all of that was not ideal.
I'm sure of it. So, you've met the students?
Oh, yes, I've met them. I actually just finished getting my hand bandaged up. Wymer's having me watch them while he and Sterling patch up the schoolhouse roof. Apparently, it's been leaking.
Yeah, but he's boring. He won't even play with us.
Clyde, I had surgery half an hour ago.
Mr. Feld said that someone who's good at making excuses is seldom good at anything else.
It's not an excuse.
Can we at least go outside?
Fine.
The kids squealed with excitement and bolted out the door. Lottie gave Etta a small smile before running off to follow her classmates.
You're really not good with kids.
Oh, I know, but is it really that obvious?
Glaringly so. Tobin, I'm glad you're okay.
I'm glad you are too. I should probably go and keep an eye on the kids. But come with me?
Of course.
Tobin laid the folded clothes on the couch next to Etta, and with a sigh, exited the parlor. Etta chuckled to herself as she watched her companion struggle to wrangle the energetic kids. She forced herself to her feet, shocked at how chipper she felt, despite the horrors of the night prior. She walked through the doorway just as Tobin disappeared down the hall, walking hurriedly to catch up with the school children. This was Mar Smith as Tobin, Mikayla Grubbs as Etta, Logyn Clair as Sterling, Kit Cactus as Wymer Feld, Shey Rico as Lottie, Ken Miller as Clyde, Mikayla Grubbs as Ruth, Kyle J. Nelson as Warren, and Luana McTiernan as our narrator, with Jovan Jeffs, Alex Fryer, and Kyle J. Nelson as the recording text. This episode was written and directed by Mar Smith and Mikayla Grubbs. Additional voices, contributors, and audio sources can be found in the episode description. This has been The Westward Eye. If you're a fan of what we're making here, please leave a review, share an episode with a loved one, and engage with our social media. You can find us on Instagram and TikTok at The Westward Eye. Thank you for listening.